Hello, this is Paul with Outpaces, and this is our report for the week ending on the 30th of May 2008. As usual, we'll be providing status and trends of the major components of the financial markets, both in the US and internationally. We will briefly review major indices and key sectors of the market. We will also report on alternate markets and on the performance of specific industries. We will tell you about one other successful trade we had last week that gave us a 32% profit in 3 days. The reviews that you're listening to now form the basis for the in-depth analysis that feed our analytical models, upon which we base our trading approach and drive our trade selection process. This week, all major stock equity indices turned pleasantly back up after last week's downturn. Both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100 seem to be working themselves out of a major fall now, while the DJ is still fighting short-term resistance. This week's change is not that dramatic because, in fact, as we see here, the Nasdaq has finished the week with a 0% change, and both DJ and S&P 500 gained about 1.5 or 2%. But the good news is that, as I said before, the downtrend seems to be over. Now, while the month view just shows us how everybody has been waiting for something to happen, and all the indices have been trading in a range, the 3 months view shows that things are indeed going back up, and the long-term positive performance is still there. It is interesting to note how over the last 3 months the Nasdaq has performed almost 4 times more strongly than the other indices. The Nasdaq is also the only one to log in at a positive, albeit an exciting 4% year to date, while the colleagues are down about 5%. This is the year-to-date performance of the 3 indices, which once again confirm the uptrend that we were discussing a moment ago. And here is the year-to-date performance in the industry sectors, which shows the rather poor behavior that we were discussing in the major indices, and it's common to almost all of the sectors. As we mentioned previously, the only 2 sectors that are in the positive so far this year are energies and materials. The good news is that all of the sectors in the last 3 months shown a positive behavior, with a couple of exceptions, and so they did in the last month, with the exception of the financials. These are individual charts for the Nasdaq 100, which, as we said, has been performing fairly well in these last couple of weeks. This is the S&P 500, and this is the Dow Jones Industrial, which is the only one that is still under a 10-week moving average. So, looking ahead, our indicators point to a reprise of the short and medium-term uptrends that started in late March, and bring us back to testing some major support levels. While this is particularly true for the Nasdaq components, S&P and DJ are still somewhat undecided, and we'll have to watch them more closely. Nothing new if we look at the market on a longer time frame. In fact, the long-term trend is still caught in a range and quite vulnerable to a downtrend. Next week we will be looking at long positions in the short-term portfolio. Looking at the alternative markets, both oil and gold have come down about 4% this past week, providing some relief to the screaming crowds and fueling in part the reprise in the equities arena. The entity of this move, however, is not large enough to confirm a long-term downtrend in these commodities, and our long positions remain open. Oil, in fact, is still up 35% year to date, while gold retreated down to a plus 5%, which is the same performance as the government bond have shown, and the S&P has lost about 5% so far this year. These charts of the 1 week performance of the country-specific funds shows that internationally things have gone well last week. Although on a yearly basis, as you see here, most of the countries are still in the negative, except for Taiwan, which is up about 6 or 7%. Good news is that all of these performances show an uptrend ongoing, which we are taking advantage of in our positions. Switching to our portfolio and trades, this past week we closed a long position in the Qs as we waited for a confirmation of the new uptrend. The trade delivered a nice 32% profit over just a 3-day trading time. The trade is shown in this picture. We bought at about 270 and we closed here at 360. As I said, for about 32% profit in 3 days. And that's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed these comments, and we invite you to visit us at outpaces.com to learn more about our trading methodologies and the services we provide. Happy trading, and we'll talk to you next week.